Greendale was the kind of English village that barely registered on most maps, its rolling hills and winding lanes the very definition of quaint. The villagers had always prided themselves on their close-knit community and their idyllic setting. But that peace was shattered when the first whispers of illness began to circulate. Fatigue was the first symptom, a heaviness that settled into bones and lingered. Then came dizziness and nausea, symptoms that were easy to dismiss as a passing virus. But when the village GP, Dr. Abernathy, found his surgery filled day after day with weary faces and complaints unceasing, concern began to churn beneath the surface of village life. Two teenage boys, Oliver and Thomas, Ollie and Tom to their friends, were among the first to notice the shift. Their usual mischievous energy was dampened by an unusual lethargy. The boys had been forbidden from touching the drone, a sleek piece of technology that was Tom's father's pride and joy, acquired much to the envy of their peers. But the temptation was too great, and their teenage defiance stronger still. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Ollie and Tom sneaked out to the countryside. With the drone buzzing like an oversized hornet, they explored the village from above. Their laughter pealed through the air, momentarily dispelling the unease that threatened to envelop them. But their joy was short-lived. A sudden gust of wind sent the drone spiraling out of control, its digital eye capturing one final chilling image before it crashed into a wooded area near the old village well.
"Oh no,"
Ollie muttered, exchanging a wide-eyed glance with Tom.
"We've got to tell my dad."
Tom replied, already dreading the confession. Chapter 2: Unseen Threats. Greendale's charm had been eclipsed by a mounting paranoia. The illness continued to spread, touching nearly every household. Theories abounded in whispers over hedgerows and in hushed conversations at the public house. Some swore it was the government testing some new chemical. Others suggested the village was cursed, a dark past come to offer its penance. In the heart of the turmoil was Alice Morton, a local journalist working for the Greendale Gazette. Practical and unyielding, Alice refused to accept supernatural explanations and instead delved into the archives for any record of past misfortunes. What she found painted a sordid tale of a long-lived village with its fair share of dark chapters. Alice's investigations led her to question Dr. Abernathy and other members of the village council, who were becoming increasingly evasive under the pressure of rising panic. Water tests were ordered, and plans for possible evacuations lurked beneath the council's carefully controlled facade. Meanwhile, in his study lined with books and the scent of aged paper, Robert, Tom's father, finally retrieved the drone from its disastrous crash. Setting it aside on his desk, he deemed it a matter to be dealt with another day. But peace was a rare commodity in Greendale. Chapter 3: Secrets in the Shadows. Weeks passed, and the illness deepened its roots into the village. Fear gave way to anger as fingers pointed and enemies were made from friends. By the time Robert finally sat down to review the drone footage, it was more from avoidance of the day's turmoil than curiosity. The screen flickered to life, and Robert leaned in, expecting to see little more than blurry fields and amateur piloting. Instead, he found himself glued to the screen. Captured in stark relief against the dark night were two shadowy figures dragging a heavy bundle towards the old well, a place steeped in superstition and fear. His heart pounded as he watched them struggle with their burden, a human body. The flight instinct screamed within him, but morbid curiosity held him in place. He discerned their faces under the moonlit sky, and though they remained strangers to him, a shiver of dread curled down his spine. Would these images bring salvation or deepen the village's plight? Chapter 4: The Beginning of Discovery. Robert's decision to hand the footage over to the police was not immediate. For days, the images haunted him, casting shadows across his thoughts. But with each passing hour, the weight of what he had seen grew unbearable. Finally, he steeled himself for the consequences and approached the authorities. The footage sparked an uproar within the precinct walls. Inspector Grace Halloway, newly transferred and eager to make a mark, took the lead on the case. The first task was grim, identifying the victim. It was an old challenge, turned sinister by the illness gripping the village. As whispers grew, another thread emerged, a missing persons report from a neighboring town, matching the victim's vague description. A laid, perhaps, but one fraught with uncertainty. Inspector Halloway faced the daunting task of untangling the mystery, the village looking to her for guidance. Every clue folded back into itself, forming a labyrinth of half-truths and shadows. Chapter 5: Deceptions We Weave. Alice persisted in her investigation, driven by journalist instincts and a personal investment in the village's survival. Her inquiries revealed strange discrepancies, financial accounts that didn't add up, sightings of a mysterious outsider who vanished as quietly as they had appeared. Every revelation seemed to entangle a local, tangling the web further. A single voice from the footage, certain in tone and familiar, echoed in Inspector Halloway's mind, though its owner remained elusive. Yet another lead pointed to a recent arrival in the village, a vagabond of sorts, seen lingering near the well with no clear purpose or explanation. When questioned, he was evasive, and before connections could be drawn, he disappeared from the village, as though he were never there. Chapter 6: Balancing Truth and Trust. As the village council debated the release of information, public relations outweighed the stark truth. Councillor Edwin Bates faced immense pressure to maintain calm, even as veins of panic threaded through community meetings. The press conference was a delicate dance. Inspector Halloway stood before the villagers, measured words offering assurances without spilling the full horror. "The water supply issue is temporary," she declared, careful not to sow further discord. Robert watched, the burden of his knowledge more massive than ever. How could he stay silent, knowing what lay beneath their feet? Yet how could he speak without setting the village ablaze with panic? Chapter 7: Unmasking the Past. The police's pursuit of truth finally pieced together a narrative stranger than fiction. The victim was identified, a drifter of ill repute, linked to one of the killers in a tale of betrayal and debts unpaid. Their history was a tapestry of shadows, strings weaving from Greendale to distant towns. The revelations brought forward two unlikely suspects, one respected and the other an outsider steeped in criminal enterprise. Their motives were rooted in greed, a plot gone awry and tied to the very land poisoning the village. In a climax of retribution and flight, the killers sought escape, their plans unraveling with every misstep and misjudgment. The chase was relentless, Inspector Halloway meting out justice as the villagers watched with bated breath. Chapter 8: The Aftermath. The truth, when revealed, was as carefully staged as any production. The water supply was purged and detoxified, the taint removed, yet the trust it took with it remained a wound. Families departed, some in search of stable land, others haunted by the echo of fears too deeply rooted to ignore. Robert and his son, standing amid the tide of change, wrestled with the role they played. Life in Greendale resumed its slow march forward, but the village was forever changed by shadows it never wished to know. In the echoes of their tale lay the heart of Greendale, a village with secrets as old as its hills, and ever braced against the silent whisper of whispers that might one day rise again.